Whenever a player switches teams in the NBA, it's a pretty big deal, especially if it's a major player like Wesley Matthews, who was just signed over to the Milwaukee Bucks. In this video, we're going to be discussing everything you need to know about Wesley Matthews and how this partnership might change the NBA game. Wesley Matthews, why is he such a big deal? Before we start looking at the details of the deal that just went down, here's a little history behind who Wesley Matthews is. Wesley Matthews is an American basketball player who actually is also the son of the legend Wes Matthews, so let's just say the sport runs in his blood. During his college career, Matthews attended Marquette University instead of the University of Wisconsin-Madison as his father did. This was clearly the right choice for Matthews since he ended up being the best guard out of the three in the starting lineup for Marquette. He has been making an impact since he first began playing. Despite being slightly shorter than the average basketball player, Wesley managed to play against bigger players and even learned how to beat them effortlessly. In December of 2005, Wesley got 13 rebounds and a 48-point win against Division II opponent, the Louis Flyers.
He was the kind of player that would just do what he had to do for us to win.
This ended up being a huge deal since Flyers were considered one of the best teams in Division II. The rise of his career. Wesley started his professional career in 2009 after the NBA draft that year and joined the Utah Jazz. He then played the Orlando Summer League and Sacramento Kings with them, where he gained a lot of experience and success. But that wasn't all. Later on, he signed a one-year-long deal with the Utah Jazz, which ended in June of 2010. That was a pretty smart move on his part because it allowed him to have a worry-free year while also letting him keep his options open for a future where he could strike a better deal somewhere else. A great player, even off the court. Well, let's just say that all the planning he did worked, because in July of 2010, Wesley signed a 5-year deal with the Trailblazers, who offered him $34 million. Matthews averaged 15.9 points while he was playing with Portland in his first ever season.
Lillard takes a three. No. Rebound. Batum keeps it alive. Matthews picks it up and dunks it,
which was enough to put him in the spotlight. Later on, when Brandon Roy missed a few games because of a knee problem, the Blazers gave him a spot in the starting lineup. Matthews played more than 250 consecutive games in the NBA before he had to sit out because of a serious hip injury from a game on December 10th of 2010. Matthews was known for playing through all the injuries he got, even if they were serious, and because of that, he was even given the nickname of Iron Man. The Blazers fans would often chant this whenever he was playing. Later in 2015, Matthews left the Utah Jazz after his contract finished and signed with the Dallas Mavericks with a $70 million deal. During a game against the Washington Wizards, he scored 28 points, which helped his team win against them.
Into the corner for a three ball that's good. Wesley Matthews.
Even though the Dallas Mavericks kept losing, it definitely wasn't because of Wesley, because he was still scoring around 20 points each game.
Pass it out to Matthews. Wesley Matthews.
Why did the Milwaukee Bucks even want Wesley Matthews? Wesley had actually signed with Milwaukee earlier in 2019.
Still with plenty of years left. To be on the back end of a career and to be able to do it at home where I appreciate it more.
But then he left a year later in 2020. Since he already had some experience, the team knew exactly what he was capable of. On top of all of that, he should be able to fit in pretty easily considering almost all the players and the coach are the same. Milwaukee Bucks are currently in need of shooters, which Wesley excels at.
Three-point hit. Nice shot, heavily contested. Wesley Matthews has made more.
He can also be a really good defender, and he's a great addition to Milwaukee's already exciting defensive team, which are known to be one of the best in the entire NBA. Now, this whole thing ended up meaning that he's a valuable player that the Bucks need. Even if they didn't specifically need him, they needed someone, which makes Wesley's chances that much better. The thing is, the Bucks right now are pretty short on players. With Pat Connaughton injured, Matthews will more than likely go into the second unit. This might change when everyone gets back to their best shape. Many people are looking forward to seeing Matthews playing alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo, since the way they play would work pretty well together. Even if he doesn't end up staying for too long, Wesley is still a far better player than Georgios Kalaitzakis, who's just a rookie at the moment. So even if he's only a temporary player, he'll have a lot of time to shine. A lot of fans are excited to see how his previous experience with the Milwaukee Bucks is going to come into play when they start working. What deal did Wesley Matthews make with the Milwaukee Bucks? Now the real question is, what deal did the Milwaukee Bucks really make to get him back on their team? Well, in the beginning, they were being extremely vague about it all and no details were announced. announced, so no one could really be sure what was going to happen. However, recently, The Athletic's Eric Nehm actually revealed that Wesley signed a non-guaranteed deal. This basically means that they don't have to pay him if they cut him before he becomes a permanent part of their team. Although it's a high-risk situation, if Wesley does end up being a permanent player for the Milwaukee Bucks, the reward will definitely be worth it. This is the exact deal that DeMarcus Cousins signed as well, who was brought in around the same time as Wesley Matthews. While Matthews might not be the best defender or shooter, it's great to have a veteran player on the team, especially when the team is being filled up after being short on players. It's possible that this addition would put the Milwaukee Bucks on top this season, but we'll have to wait and see how this one plays out. Now for some other NBA news. Dennis Smith Jr. reveals the harsh truth about his ex-coach. Everyone knows how fast Dennis Smith Jr. and Luka Doncic became friends after Smith got selected by the Dallas Mavericks in the 2018 NBA draft. The two apparently used to play video games all the time and even shared an apartment building together. They used to post social media pictures together and basically do everything together. However, there was one person who clearly wasn't too fond of Smith, Rick Carlisle. He believed that Smith and Doncic wouldn't complement each other because he basically thought that Smith wasn't good enough to be a good NBA starter. He wanted the Dallas Mavericks to draft Donovan Mitchell instead. A few months later, Smith actually ended up being traded in the Kristaps Porzingis deal, who came in midway through Doncic's first season. Smith actually took to Twitter and said that in an article that was talking about his relationship with his coach Rick Carlisle, it was spot on with the information. Doncic also talked about how he didn't like the way Carlisle would treat some of his current and former teammates. Apparently, Carlisle and Smith would get into a bunch of arguments almost regularly, to the point where everyone had just gotten used to it. He even accused Smith of being jealous of Doncic, even though he was great friends with him. Many players talked about how unfair he was towards Smith, and Doncic even said that he believed that this was Carlisle's way of trying to split them up.
Breaking news in the NBA, we have our first COVID postponements of the season, and it involves the Chicago Bulls' 2 weekday games this week.
Chicago Bulls' next 2 games get postponed by NBA after some players get COVID. On the 13th of December, the NBA announced that the Chicago Bulls' next 2 games, which are against the Detroit Pistons and Toronto Raptors, have officially been postponed. Apparently, 10 of their players and some of the staff members are currently in the COVID-19 health and safety protocols. This is the first time an NBA game has been postponed this season, and it serves as a reminder that the COVID-19 pandemic isn't over just yet. When a player tests positive for the virus or is likely exposed to someone who has it, they go through all the protocols. The players need to quarantine for 10 days or until they receive 2 negative test results that are at least 24 hours apart after they are in the protocol. The pandemic was so bad last year that it postponed a bunch of games throughout the entire season, with the LA Lakers, LA Clippers, and the Nets being the only teams with no postponements at all. But the situation had gotten a lot better since then, which is why the Chicago Bulls postponement was so surprising to many people. Anthony Edwards officially becomes the youngest player in the history of the NBA to make 10 3-pointers. Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves put on an amazing performance on the night of December 15th, 2021, when he defeated Kia MVP Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets 124-107, which helped the Wolves win their 2nd consecutive game. Edwards was basically unstoppable and scored a team-high 38 points. He also recorded 48 points in the Timberwolves' 123-110 loss against the Warriors on November 10th. Because of this, Anthony Edwards officially became the youngest player ever to get 10 3-pointers in the history of the NBA. And that's a wrap for today's video. We'll see you next time.